When the couple first started renovating the old house, the strangest thing they expected to find was maybe some old pipes, a forgotten piece of furniture, or newspapers stuffed inside the walls from decades ago. What they did not expect was a hidden space that looked like it had been carefully sealed away on purpose. Behind one of the upstairs bedroom walls, they discovered a narrow door frame that had been covered with drywall and painted over so perfectly that nobody would ever notice it during normal living. When they finally managed to break the wall open and pull the door loose, they found a small dark room filled almost entirely with photographs, hundreds of them, all carefully organized, and every single photograph showed the same house from the outside at different times over nearly 20 years. What made it unsettling was that many of the pictures were taken late at night, from different angles around the yard, almost as if someone had been standing in the dark watching the house for decades. The couple thought they had uncovered the strange habit of a former owner, but as they looked closer at the photographs, they began noticing details that made the situation far more disturbing than simple curiosity. Before we start, please subscribe if you haven't already. The house itself sat near the edge of a quiet neighborhood where the streets were lined with older trees, and most of the homes had been standing since the late 1970s. It was the kind of place where families stayed for years, children grew up together, and neighbors knew one another well enough to borrow tools or collect mail when someone traveled. The house that the couple bought had been empty for almost 2 years before they moved in, and according to the real estate agent, the previous owner had passed away without any close relatives to inherit it. Because the house needed a lot of repairs, the price had been surprisingly low, and for the couple it felt like a rare opportunity to buy a large home that they could slowly fix together. The man worked remotely doing graphic design, while the woman worked evenings at a veterinary clinic, which meant during the day he often stayed alone in the house while contractors came and went. At first the renovations were simple things, replacing broken cabinets, removing old carpet, repainting the walls, and repairing small areas of water damage that had spread from an old roof leak years earlier. The house creaked and shifted in the quiet way older houses often do. And during the first few weeks, both of them occasionally joked about how every unfamiliar sound made the place feel like it was still adjusting to having people living inside again. The upstairs bedroom at the end of the hallway became their main renovation project about a month after moving in, mostly because the walls in that room had an odd, uneven texture, like someone had patched the drywall several different times over the years. One afternoon, the man began removing sections of the wall to replace them entirely, carefully cutting squares with a drywall saw and pulling them loose so new panels could be installed. While doing this, he noticed something strange along one section near the closet, where the saw suddenly slid through empty space behind the wall instead of insulation or wooden framing. At first, he assumed there might be some kind of ventilation duct hidden there. But when he widened the opening, he saw the outline of a wooden frame that looked exactly like a narrow door, except it had been sealed completely behind the wall. The door handle had even been removed, and the entire thing covered with drywall so cleanly that it blended perfectly with the rest of the room. Curious, he used a hammer to knock away the remaining plaster until the full shape of the door became visible. The woman returned from work that evening just as he was prying the door loose from its frame, and both of them laughed nervously about how strange it was to discover something like that hidden inside their house. They imagined it might be an old storage closet or maybe a small safe room someone had built long ago. When the door finally pulled open with a stiff cracking sound, a wave of stale air drifted out from the darkness inside. The space beyond the door was surprisingly small, maybe 6 feet wide and 8 feet deep, with bare wooden walls and no windows. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling, connected to a thin pull string, And when the man tugged it, the bulb flickered on with a dull yellow glow that revealed the room was almost entirely filled with photographs. At first, the couple stood there quietly, simply trying to understand what they were looking at. Every wall was covered from top to bottom with printed photos taped in neat rows, and even the floor had several cardboard boxes filled with more pictures stacked carefully inside. When they stepped closer, the pattern became obvious. Every photograph showed their house. Some were taken during the day with bright sunlight across the yard, others were taken at night with the windows glowing from inside, and many were clearly shot from different positions around the property, sometimes from across the street, sometimes from behind the trees near the fence line, sometimes from what looked like the edge of the nearby woods. Each picture had a date written on the back in black marker. The earliest photos dated back almost 20 years. At first, the couple assumed the person who used to live there must have been documenting the house somehow, maybe taking pictures during renovations or changes to the property. But the longer they examined the photographs, the stranger the pattern became. None of the photos showed construction or landscaping or anything that would explain why someone was recording the house so often. Instead, the pictures simply showed the house existing through time. Winter snow covering the roof, autumn leaves across the lawn, rainstorms blurring the windows, and sometimes faint silhouettes visible behind the curtains when someone inside had lights on. Many photos were taken late at night. The angles suggested someone standing quietly in the yard, sometimes very close to the windows. One photograph showed the living room window glowing warmly while a figure sat on the couch inside, unaware that the picture was being taken from just outside the glass. The couple stared at that one for a long moment before realizing something that made the woman uneasy. The photo had been taken only 4 years earlier, which meant the previous owner must have been alive at that time. But the photo had clearly been taken by someone standing outside the house. As the couple continued sorting through the boxes, they noticed the photographs were arranged carefully by year, almost like a long record of observation. The earlier pictures showed the house when an older couple had lived there, which the neighbors later confirmed had been the previous owners. But around 8 years ago, something changed. The photographs after that point showed fewer lights inside the house, fewer signs of life, and eventually the house appeared completely dark and empty. Yet the photos kept going. Even during the 2 years the house had been abandoned, someone had continued taking pictures of it. Pictures taken in the rain, pictures taken at night, pictures taken from the woods. The woman began feeling uncomfortable standing in that little room, surrounded by images of the house from every possible angle, as if the walls themselves were watching them. That night she had a strange dream where she looked out the bedroom window and saw someone standing at the edge of the yard holding a camera, but the figure remained too dark to see clearly. The next morning she tried to brush it off as nerves, but the man admitted something that made the situation worse. He had also been hearing faint sounds outside the house late at night, like someone walking slowly through leaves near the fence. At first he thought it might be animals, but now the sound seemed different in his memory, more like careful footsteps. Still, they told themselves it was probably nothing and continued sorting the photographs over the next few days, trying to understand why someone would spend decades quietly documenting a single house. Then one afternoon, the man discovered something inside the last box that changed everything. At the very bottom were several newer photographs. These ones were not dated, and unlike the others, they did not show the previous owners living there. They showed the couple themselves. One photo showed them unloading furniture from a truck the day they moved in. Another showed the woman standing in the kitchen window washing dishes late at night. Another showed the man sitting in the living room with his laptop, completely unaware of the camera pointed at him through the glass. The photos were recent, very recent. Some had clearly been taken only days earlier. The couple slowly realized something that made the entire hidden room feel colder. Whoever had been watching the house for 20 years had never stopped. They were still watching. That night, the man walked outside with a flashlight and carefully searched the yard, checking the fence line, the trees, and the edge of the woods behind the property. But he found nothing except quiet darkness and the sound of wind through branches. But when he returned inside, the woman noticed something on the floor of the hidden room that had not been there earlier that day. A new photograph. The picture showed the man standing in the yard just minutes earlier, shining his flashlight toward the woods. On the back of the photograph, someone had written a single sentence. 20 years inside the house was long enough.